So, all right. Well, of course you're going to pick that fight, aren't you? You're just going to fight me on that, aren't you? All right. So, that's a huge depression right there. I think you can use that for molding things that would, though. All right, so 30 seconds in already, and I haven't said anything of substance. I'm a little late coming in today because I was doing that thing I do where, like, I was spending money. It's like I do that very reluctantly, but with the planning and going forward on the health and well-being category, figuring out what I want to do for content production for this category of content, looking at the options. I was mentioning one of the categories of things that appealed to me was, future-wise, looking into, like I don't buy into a lot of the hokey sort of like almost fanatical religious approach to dietary regimes, and so I don't usually go for that kind of thing. But as a food nerd, as somebody who makes all sorts of recipes all the time, I'm super curious about some of these alternative approaches to making recipes. And so I'm going back and forth over in my head. Is the person who produces the recipes for, and like, I really respect her marketing genius. She had a vegan cookbook, which is like cooked vegan food. It had, I think, 30 recipes for $25 in an ebook. And then she has a raw vegan cookbook with 48 recipes. Now, some of those are like, this is a smoothie kind of thing. But like, so 48 recipes, again, for $25. And then a devoted raw vegan smoothie cookbook that is, I want to say 21 recipes for $15. And then a 21 recipe raw vegan food recipe book for $15. So you've got 50 and 30, and so you're $80 in if you purchase all four of those. And then there's like a 12 recipe cookbook for like holiday special meals for $10. And so like you're $80 in, and you've got like 130, 140 recipes. I'm a little rough on the numbers there. I'm losing it. But I'm like, that's interesting. So like, if you had basically, broken it down to a per recipe cost for all of them, you're talking a little bit under $1 per recipe. And I was like, that's not super bad. It's an interesting way to do that. And it's, marketing wise, it's not a unreasonable approach. But just in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm not going to spend $80 on any of this stuff. Like, what ones do I legitimately really feel like would be worth my time? And so I'm kind of curious, and I'm looking around at it, and I go like, well, let's see. If you were to buy a recipe book on Amazon, how much would you pay for 100 recipes? So if I just did the 48 and 30, I guess I could add the rest of them. It's like 130 recipes total. But if I cut out some of those recipes, how much would I be willing to pay? And looking online on Amazon, like a cookbook with 125 recipes in it, going for usual sale price of about, what was it? Like, I think I saw like some of them range about $25 to $32 for the book of 120 some odd recipes. And I went, okay, that's $30 for the same number of recipes, where if you buy each of the installments on her website, you're paying 80. I'm like, that's interesting. But like, if you're doing it like through her website, I mean, technically a lot of what she's doing is advising you on early phases of trying out veganism. And so it's like she's got some words of wisdom from her own experience and advice, and what to expect and those types of things, which you don't always get in the front of a cookbook for recipes. And so I guess some of that's there, and like motivational talking and certain things, and I'm like, okay. And she's got high quality photography of all the recipes. So it's not like a ebook where it's just the text. But I'm like, all right, I can see, like, if you want to be part of a community and share your experience with that kind of thing. And I see it almost as sort of like similar to, she does YouTube content too. And I see it sort of like a merch for a YouTuber. If you're a fan of her YouTube channel and the content they produce there, that's not just vegan or recipe-based stuff. It's exercise and well-being and meditation and that kind of stuff. Like, I guess as like merch of that a fan can buy from one of their favorite YouTubers, I get it. But I still don't want to spend $80 for it. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I'm on Amazon. What if I just use some of the things she says, like in the intros to what each of these books have, as search terms? And sure enough, like, where one of her books was, I think it was 30 recipes of non-raw vegan food, there was a book that pretty much covers a lot of the same things. And I think it was like, let me see if I can find it. I pulled it up and I was looking at it and I was like, no way. But yeah, this is a cooked vegan food cookbook with 101 recipes instead of 30. And I can get on Kindle, I can get for $5. If I want the paperback version of it, it's $15. If I buy a used paperback version of it, I can maybe get one for $13 or $14. If I get a spiral bound cookbook, I'll pay like $30 for it. So, I mean, I could get the Kindle book for $5 and I'd be fine. Like, I don't necessarily need the pretty pictures for it. So I'm like, $5 for 3 times as many recipes, a little over 3 times as many recipes as she offers for the same category of food type. And then like her book, her $10 book for I think it was like 12 holiday dessert treat kind of recipes. Like, I was looking around and there's the raw vegan baking, which is a cookbook with, I don't know if it says how many recipes are in this one, but it's a whole cookbook just devoted to that, and it's going to have way more. And I can get the Kindle version for $10. So it'd be the same price, but for more recipes. I can get a paperback version used for somewhere around $8. So I'm getting it a little bit cheaper, like $2 cheaper. So that one's not as big an improvement, but because I was searching in those categories, like the book, she has a book devoted specifically to smoothies for $15. And I can get a bunch more recipes for $5 on Amazon instead of the $15 she's charging for a third, maybe even less recipes. And then a big one popped up for plant-based dips, dressings, and condiments and sauces. And that one is pretty expensive no matter what you do. It's $30 on a Kindle book, and it's $40 on a paperback. But it has 117 recipes for different sauces, dips, and condiments. Dressings. Might even have some soups in there. I don't remember. But I'm like, yeah, I think I can do better price-wise for a lot of this information on Amazon. And so I'll probably end up doing that. But I did look at two of her remaining ones. Like as I gradually weeded out things, I was like, all right, so there are two in here that I'm curious about. One is for a diet, not just like a diet as in what you eat, but one for improving health benefits, and it's an eating plan for 14 days. And it includes things like, I'm trying to remember, I bought two of her books. I bought one of the $25 ones and one of her 15, I think. And one of those books has like a raw vegan pad thai. And I did my mukbangs a little while ago. When I did Thai food, pad thai was really good. So I'm curious to see what that's like. She had like a spicy pulled pork burgers. She did a vegetarian lasagna. And so it has some recipes in there that are like, okay, that's maybe worth $1 for each of those recipes. And looking through the other book, she had things like cinnamon rolls, and she had a Nutella crepe. And I'm like, how would you even do that? Like, the things I'm curious about are like the nice creams, the raw vegan ice creams, the smoothies that I'm thinking would be worthwhile, maybe tweaking the recipes slightly, but turning them into popsicles. Honestly, that would be just amazing, I think. And then, like, she's got like a mac and cheese in there, and she's got, I mean, she's got some of these recipes that, like, how do you do that without eggs, milk, or other dairy? And like, you can't do it with like milk, eggs, cheese, yogurts, and she doesn't use wheat, so she doesn't do any grain-based foods. I think she's got like a nacho dip that has some corn in it, but she doesn't do like replace most of your calories with rice or corn kind of stuff, or potatoes. And so it's generally, it looks like it's a very healthy approach to doing some of these things. And some of what she does for like salad dressings, I'm kind of curious. We're like, how do you do that without some of the ingredients we're used to using for that? Highly processed or cooked, or containing eggs, dairy, or meat products. Like, how do you pull some of that off? And I'm like, as a curiosity to see, like, okay, if I take this and use this to do, like she did like you don't do deviled eggs, you do deviled zucchini. And I'm like, that seems like a horrible idea. But okay, we'll look into it. But looking at the way that she approaches that, like, could I do a zucchini egg replacement component to a recipe like a egg salad? Like if you took just the eggs, diced them up, and used, instead of a mayonnaise, the deviled egg or the deviled zucchini mixture, it'd be a little bit of a healthier egg salad. And so like now I really have something to play with. And so I was super curious about it enough that looking through it, I think I got 48, 21. I think I got about 60 to 70 recipes total in the 2 books that I got. I spent about $40. So it's not the most ideal price, but for 50 cents a recipe, roughly, I think it's about 65 cents a recipe when you come out calculating it. It's not a bad deal, and it gives me something to play with. And going forward, looking at the books I found on Amazon, crunching the numbers on that, like I'm really debating that plant-based dips and dressings book, because like if I make any one of those dips, dressings, sauces, condiments, any of that stuff, and use it on, say, tuna fish or chicken, or I could do tofu if I wanted to do a real vegan thing. But like just realizing that with the plant-based choices, you have a higher nutrient content and a lower empty caloric filler. I'm sort of like, yeah, I have some ideas of what I can do with that. That one's the expensive one. The others, I think for, let's see, 10, so 5, 10. So for about $20, I can have like 400 recipes of things that I can use and adapt into making other foods. And I was like, that's a lot to work with. And so I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to end up doing that. So, and that's $20 it's still cheaper than the remaining 3 of her books put together. It's still cheaper than like 30 recipes of hers in the bigger one of her books remaining. So it makes more sense. But I still respect her as a marketing savvy individual. But I'm also not going to live a vegan life. I'll try it, see how it goes, and maybe introduce more of that to my life. But it's never going to be what I am. I'm too much of a skeptic to really do that. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll try it and decide that it's the best thing I've ever done. I don't know. But right now, I'm enough of a skeptic to say, like, this is not my new identity. This is not my new approach to life. So I'm doing this as exploration of new recipes and material to try out a different way of eating for a little while. But sauces, you can always use sauces, condiments, and soups and stews and smoothies in new and interesting ways. And just because they started out as vegan raw food recipes doesn't mean that that's what I'm gonna do with them. Like one of those books has a bunch of recipes. Like I've never encountered. They're not meant to replace something because I have never heard of a chili lime salad dressing that I've ever seen anywhere. And so it's like, oh, they're legitimately playing with flavors and combinations that the rest of us don't ever find because they need it to flavor some of their food in a way that doesn't make it, oh, more salad, yay. So like a chili lime dressing, I can see doing that, mixing that up with a little bit of a thickener or something with some diced up chicken breast over pasta. That would be amazing. Like that's not the intent for doing that, but that would be amazing. So that book I may have to see what I can find out about because I'm not sure I'm up for spending $40 for that book. We'll see. That's an expensive book, and I like a hard copy. Like the Kindle book is $30. Why wouldn't I just pay an extra $10 to get the hardbound book or the paperback? And there are no used copies for like legitimately less. If I got the used copy available, it'd be $34.50, and that's not counting shipping. Whereas the paperback, I have Amazon Prime. I could get 2-day free delivery for $40. Still $40 though. That's a lot of money for a book. I've only spent, I think maybe a couple times in my life have I spent more than $40 on a book. And that's because it's super hard to find that particular book or books. One of them was an English translation of the works, the Book of Five Stones. No, not the Book of Five Stones. Yeah, the Book of Stones, I think, by Jabir ibn Hayyan, who was I want to say a 15th, 14th century Persian alchemist, and one of the people who cracked a lot of methods for like waterproofing and changing materials over and making glass clear rather than green. And so just kind of like I like an English translation of the works of one of the greatest alchemists in history. Like, of course I want to read that book. I feel stupid saying that, honestly. I feel like an idiot saying that because it sounds so weird. But, like, of course that's fascinating to me. Like, a legitimate mad scientist from the Middle Ages who cracked the code on so many things that makes so much of what we currently do in the world possible. Like, yes, I want to read that. In his own words, how he views the world and how it fits together. A look through history at how the predecessor to modern chemistry understood the makings and the foundations of the world. Like, that's fascinating. It's a philosophical text. It's a mad scientist science project delight. It's an understanding of history and the roles of different faiths and cultures in the advancing and development of technology in that time frame. I'm like, it's all the most amazing things I could ever want in one book. Of course I want a copy of that. But considering the topic of that book, it's pretty clear that for the vast majority of the population, they don't care about that kind of information. So this is going to be something that only medieval scholars and like historical chemistry fiends, fanatics, fans would be interested in. So it's an academic book. It's something that a professor writes for, a doctor writes for college professors to read for their own interest, or occasionally a very rare class on the topics within that book. So the buying audience for that is probably about 30 people in the United States. And so, yeah, for publishing that book, the return on investment means the price tag is going to be a little steep. So I mean, I'll pay for some unusual rare books. I do not think that necessarily this particular YouTuber's ebooks are worth, at least to me, that price. But I'm not a fan, and it's a curious thing to look into. The tendency, like everybody who seems to have purchased it, there are plenty of really, really positive reviews. Now, I wager a good portion of that is because they already love the creator of them, and they view those books as ways of not only supporting the creator, but also participating in the same group patterns and behaviors and exercises, as it's a sense of belonging to that community. You've sort of got the group T-shirt approach, and so of course they're happy with that. That's their Jabir ibn Hayyan translated work. It's like, I'm one of the few who's a devoted fan of this topic and the creator. Of course I want to read that book. And so I get it. And that's the fact that she understands how that works, that relationship works, and played to it so well by creating her book in that style. And the way she did it, it wasn't like, here are 132 recipes, pay me $80. It was, here are 48 recipes you can get for $25. That's a decent deal. That's about 50 cents per recipe. And so it's like, I mean, that is economically not gouging your fan base. It's like, I respect that. And, the fact that she did it in such a way that, like, it's not gouging your fan base if they want to buy one of your books. But if they buy all 5 of your books, and she has a free book off to the side that's just support, and like a friendly discussion of living a better life kind of thing. And so if you got all 6 of those books for $80 as a devoted fan, that's not a bad ticket price. And so, I mean, for the effort put in, they're ebooks, so she doesn't have to pay a publisher, she doesn't have to store them or any of that sort of stuff. It's literally just a PDF file that you end up getting. And so the outlying costs to establish those was the photography, the editing, and the composition and layout. It's graphic design. You get a graphic designer, a photographer, and you make the recipes. You come up with the recipes. And once you've done that, she never has to do any more work, but she can continue to keep selling those things. That's smart. It's sort of it's on the line of some of the things I want to do for this channel, where like I produce a board game and here's where you can go download it, kind of thing. Here is a book that I wrote. Here is the ebook that you can download. I don't ever have to rewrite that book. I don't ever have to make adjustments, or it doesn't ever go out of print. I don't have to put one more lick of work into that book, but it can continue to sell for as long as I have it posted. That's smart. I don't have to get a publisher to approve that book. I don't have to, if I sell through Amazon, I believe they take a cut of any sales, whereas she's selling through her own website as PDF files. So I believe she doesn't have anybody taking a cut of her book. Again, smart. But yeah, it's just like, I can appreciate that. And I can appreciate how to apply some of that philosophy to what I do. Now, I don't know that I would ever, I would say if you bought one, if I were doing that, if I did several books, $25 an ebook for like 2 or 3 of them, if you buy one, I'll give you a $5 off the second $25 ebook. And if you buy both $25 ebooks together, I will give you $10 off of a third book. Like, to me, it seems like if you're going to be enough of a fan to start buying into that, I don't need $80 from you as one person. Maybe that's just my philosophy, and I have to get over it. Because I do know, I do struggle sometimes as an artist, putting a price tag on the works I make. Because, it's something that I worked on. I can't look at one of my paintings that I did this past week or so ago. I think it's 3 weeks now. No. Was it a month ago? I think it was a month ago. Looking at those paintings, I'm like, those are all right. And I could sell those paintings for $50 somewhere at a painting art show or something like that. But I could get prints made of those. But I don't know that I would ever say, I would feel weird and uncomfortable. There's a guy I know who's a teacher of artists, and he says you need to price your artwork by the square inch. So you run your width and height number, and then you multiply that by 2. When you multiply the width and height to get your square inches, however many square inches you have, you multiply that by 2, and that should be the price that your painting is. And we would never have a painting under $500. I would never charge $500 for one of my paintings. I'm not comfortable with that. But I go into art galleries. When I went across country, I visited several art galleries. And I looked at a lot of the pieces of artwork, and I'm like, I could do that in an afternoon. It wasn't just painting. Some of them were interesting experiments with materials. I'm like, I could do that in an afternoon. That would be kind of fun to try out. And then you look at the price, and it's like, oh, this thing that would probably take me an hour or 2 to do, and the raw materials probably cost all of $10, its sale price is $387. I'm like, wow. And if I made 5 of them in an afternoon and did that 3 days a week for a month, holy crap, that's a full-time living. And I can't get past that mentality in my head. Who's right, them or me? It feels too high priced for me. But clearly, if they're pricing it at that level, if they only sell 1 or 2 a month, they're still doing pretty good. I mean, that's minimum wage full-time job here in New Hampshire, after taxes, your take home is probably about, so you're doing about 40 hours a week, which is full-time. Minimum wage is about $7.25 an hour. You're kind of, and you take about, what is it, 30% out for taxes. You're taking about $900 home per month. And if you sell 4 $300 works of art in a month, you're kind of there. I'm like, wow. And we have a global marketplace where you can sell your artworks anywhere in the world. And that's just the originals. If you sell a print or a photograph, if you do like a sculpture and you sell a photograph of your sculpture as a $10 print rather than a $900 sculpture, and you sell maybe 50 of those photographs, you know, it's like a $10 photograph times 50, you're making $500 a month off of the photographs alone from your sculpture. Like, I get it as a business idea. I can wrap my head around that. That makes sense. But myself as an artist, I feel weird about that. And I think it's something I have to work my way out of. Because if I'm going to make a living off of doing some of the things I'm going to be doing, I need to get over that. And it's so hard to realize that some people will legitimately do that. And I'll give you like a little lead in on something that will go up in a few months on my, well, probably in a year on my other YouTube channel for the Makerspace tours. I encountered a guy in New Mexico who's an artist, and he sells these chandeliers that he does for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he gets people to fly him out to exotic locations and be in their condos or hotel suites or whatever. The ritzy people are living in tops of skyscrapers in these mansions on top of a skyscraper kind of thing. And they pay him gobs of money and fly him to all sorts of exotic places around the world to put these chandeliers in place. And they're made out of paper plates and staples. And I'm just sort of like, what have I been doing with my life? How are you getting more money for one sale than I think I could ever earn at a full-time job, even above minimum wage? Let's see, I could maybe make, like if I really, really pushed it, I could maybe luck into about a $10 an hour, 40 hours a week job. So that'd be $400 a week. So I could do 60, maybe $1,800 a month. So let's round it up to $2,000 a month. 12 months, 24,000. I would have to work 100 years to make what he made from one chandelier. I think my math must be off on that. That doesn't sound right. But it boggles my mind. And yeah, I don't know how I got on this train of thought, but okay. And I do think that figuring out how to manage that I have seen some of that stuff, and that is one of the categories of content I was actually thinking about dabbling with in like a challenge on the Opportunity Forge channel that'll start. So, like, yeah, I've seen some of that. You can go on like Fiverr and find what is it, 6,000 public domain works that you can redo the artwork for and publish through Amazon or something like that. And I'm like, I don't like that. It feels weird. Yeah, for me, one of the things I would do is I would probably, and I have, I bought one of those packets just to test it out a while back of several works, and there's a lot of garbage you have to sift through. But if you just sorted out the ebooks that you could republish as is, sort them by topic, skim read most of them, and pluck out key points from several of the books, recompile them, and rephrase them, write out what your points are yourself in your own words, and then if you can, either pay a photographer or do some photography yourself. I'm fine with that approach to it. The download and re-upload, that's sort of like, I think I mentioned yesterday, there's a guy who had a video that recommended like how to make YouTube a successful YouTube channel and get $100 through AdSense a day by downloading other people's videos and uploading them yourself. Like, yeah, that's scummy. I don't like that. Like, do some work. And I mean, the other thing I'll say about like some of those public domain books, like the download and upload right to Amazon right away kind of books, I've never bought one of those books online. I've seen some of those ebooks. Like, go to the Kindle store and you look through it and you're like, how to do, these exercises, and it's like a generic stock photo book cover, and you look at it and it's like a 48-page ebook, and I'm like, I'm not going to pay you $4 for that book. This is content I can look up blog entries on for free on the web. Like, I really don't need that book. I've never bought that kind of book from somebody online. But as sort of like a preliminary step for researching a nonfiction work, that's not a bad way to go. It's sort of like going to the library and reading through the encyclopedia on a topic that you want to write something about. You've got some good information, you write that down, it leads you to some potential other sources to look into. You look into those, you grab some things to write down from there, and then you do some actual like essay writing structures for each chapter, and before you know it, you've got a functional book. That's sort of why I was a little frustrated with how hard I made the book I was writing at the start of this year. Is I could have very easily done just that. I could very easily grab a bunch of ebooks on a public domain work from a Fiverr sale. You go to the Fiverr website and you can get 6,000 of these things on 100 different topics: golf, dieting, fitness, pet care, all that crap. You can get a bunch of these things, and you're going to get like 5 to 10 in each category. You pull out all those in each category, you speed read through them, you break it down into the important points that each one makes, and if one of them has a point that one of the other ones miss, you just slap the pieces together and you build a rough template, and you go through, clean it up so that it blends together well, and then you pull out each section and you divide them into chapters that make sense for what you're doing. And then once you've done that, you rewrite each chapter as an essay directly from your own thought process. And then it's just like you're writing out an essay, and for the most part, and a nonfiction book like that probably doesn't have much over 200 pages. And if you have some charts and some pictures to include to illustrate points being made, you can probably write off about 30 to 50 of those pages out of 200 to charts and images. Get a good photographer to do or even just give it a try yourself, do a good photography cover, and use some simple fonts. Google Fonts is a thing you can actually look up, and they've got a whole slew of fonts that you can use for all kinds of stuff, and they're free. And so you can pick a font, make a photograph, and structure probably something like you could probably do about like 3-page essays for each section of each chapter, and you could easily within 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, if you really crunched at it at full-time hours, 40 hours a week, 40 hours is plenty of time to do a full nonfiction book that way. And I could have very easily done something like that, and it was kind of on my mind to give that a try starting on New Year's. But no, I had to go choose a more complicated topic. Logic, philosophy, reason, and fallacies and biases. Like, I had to choose the difficult way to do it. Yeah, if you can do it, even just charts or infographics in your book, it makes oftentimes a sometimes dry and unenjoyable topic easier to tolerate. Well, drawing would be one way to do it. One of the things that I have seen is if you can do color photography for your book, do it. And there's a really easy way to do that. You can do a simple cardboard photography booth, set up a seamless backdrop with just like a colored piece of poster board, and set an object on there and take a picture, and you can remove the background or use a seamless background just for a single object that you're taking a picture of. If you wanted to do something similar for a person, so if you were doing an exercise book and you wanted to show the different stances each person did, you can do a huge roll of paper, like a butcher block paper or something like that, and let it curl down underneath the feet of the person without coming to a sharp edge. And once you take photography on that, it gives you a seamless background of the person standing there. And that's good for color photography. If you want to do it in black and white photography, that's cheaper to do in a book, and that makes it easy to illustrate some simple things. But if you really want a much simpler work, or an artwork or a demonstration of a thing, all you need is a point-and-click camera, do a black and white photography, and you take it into a piece of software like GIMP, which is the free version of Photoshop. And there are free tutorials on YouTube of how you can take a black and white photograph in GIMP and reduce it to line art, so it looks like it's a hand-drawn. Like, look for turn a photograph into a hand drawing with GIMP. Just do a Google search for that, and you can find a way to turn a lot of photographs into what looks like a pencil or marker drawing. And once you've got that, you can put those for any illustration you want to do in your book. So if you're doing a cookbook and you want to do black and white images of, like if you don't want to include color images and you think like a hand-drawn line art image is more to your liking, you can do that with just editing a photograph in GIMP. And so if you have no artistic skills for drawing or painting or illustration, you don't have to hire somebody to do each of those illustrations. Because once you do like a cookbook and you wanted an illustration of a kitchen counter layout for a decorative top border, and then each recipe done in a hand illustrated image, that would easily be like a recipe cookbook would be 100 drawings. That would be insane. Like, to pay somebody to do that, it's going to be probably $15 minimum per illustration. So you're going to be paying over $1,500 for that book. Oh, you got Photoshop. You went the full way. Yeah, it's to me like being able to take an app like that that'll take those images like that and then cut and paste those images as the illustrations in your book. Yeah, I won't pay for Photoshop. And especially since a lot of those types of apps have gone towards subscription fees. I don't do that crap. I don't do, like, I did a robot programming course a few years ago on Coursera, and they're like, yeah, you can use MATLAB. And I'm like, okay. It's like, because you're a student, you get a discount of like $30 off of a $140 price tag. And that $140 is good for, I think, 4 months. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, that $140 is like at least 3/4 of a month's worth of food budget for me. There have been times in my life where $140 is almost a third. It's about a third of my rent at some points in my life. That's not bad, but I'm still of the philosophy, like, GIMP is free. And it does most everything that I would need Photoshop to do. Like, I don't need to be involved with Photoshop. I do the same thing with like word processing programs. Like, you can pay to subscribe to Microsoft Word. And I'm like, why would I do that when I can get LibreOffice for free? And LibreOffice actually gives me the potential to open and edit some of my files as PDFs. And then, I could literally write an entire ebook in LibreOffice, save it as a PDF file, upload it to my website as an ebook, and I'm done. Like, Microsoft Word, last time I checked, didn't have that capability. You had to get an extension or get an extra piece of software to convert from Word document over to a PDF file. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I am totally not doing that. I'm a big supporter of any open source, free to use software. OBS for video editing, HitFilm Express for video editing, LMMS for audio, Audacity. LMMS is a music composition and song creating software. Audacity is for all types of audio. I use LibreOffice for documentation, a simple text editor that I can use for both editing text documents and coding for computer writing. So if I did a Python program that I wrote the code to, I can use the text editor to edit on that. I use, I do think I have an old copy of MS Paint that I don't have to pay anybody to do anything with, and I can do very simple editing of images. I actually use it pretty frequently where I do if I go to a website and I like a design, I can hit the print screen button and it saves it to the clipboard, and I go into MS Paint and I paste the print screen file, and then it fills the screen. I cut off all the parts I don't want and save the pieces of the web page that I want to save, and then I can actually do it multiple times until I've got a compilation of still images of projects or hacks or ideas that I want to try later on. and I save it as a simple PNG file or a JPEG file that I can keep on my hard drive, and it's sort of like a giant collage of projects or ideas for tinkering around. And it's a free piece of software I use to do that with. I've got Inkscape for one type of graphic editing, and then I've got GIMP for another type. I've got 3 browsers, and that does pretty much everything I could ever want to do. I can edit still images. I can edit vector and why is my brain not working? I can edit vector and non-vector graphics, raster graphics. So raster and vector still images. I can use if I want to do any 3D image construction, I can use SketchUp or a Blender. I can edit music. I can edit video. I can do live streaming. I can create songs. Like, all of these things are free. I don't have to pay anything for. So, yeah, you can stick with it if it works for you. I mean, if Photoshop works for you, go for it. Like, I just know that, like, I would feel bad for spending the money on it for years to come, because I know, like, with the like, I don't know what they're even up to now for a subscription to Photoshop, but like, if it's like $123, like some of those software suites are, like $123, like, if I pay for that twice, I could have replaced my computer by now. Like, it's just not. And there are some of my friends talk about, like, cloud storage, and I'm like, well, that's great, but how much do you pay per month to do that? Like, there's very little out there that I would pay. Like, why would I pay, what is it, something like $50 a month for a terabyte of storage on the cloud? I can go out to like Walmart and get an external hard drive that stores a terabyte. I pay for it once, and it's mine, and it works till I break it. And usually I can get about 5 years off of a thing before I really put it through its paces enough to break it. So I'm like, why would I? And that's per month, or is that per year? $20 for Photoshop per year? That's not too bad. Okay, per month, $20 per month. Whoa, that's gouging. Oh, I'm not gonna nitpick. I'm not gonna nitpick. Do what works for you. But, oh man, in 10 months, you've paid $200 for it. God, like, I can literally go buy a 2-in-1 tablet computer that can get me internet access when I'm traveling across country in the summer this year for $175. So for less than 10 months of Photoshop, I can get internet access anywhere to the web. And that tablet computer might be strong enough that I could load GIMP into it. So not only could I do what most people would do with Photoshop, but I could do it and buy a computer to do it on. That's just me. I'm like a skinflint. I am cheap, but I am poor, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, I do have a friend who he has a saying. Like I was talking with him at one point where like he's like, we need something. It was a housemate, and he's like, we need this to do this in the house. And I went, well, I could make you something that would do that. And he goes, how long does that take? And I'm like, might take me about 3 weeks. And he goes, I can go pay $15 to $20 right now and get everything we need to get that done within the next 4 hours. So the real question for you here is, yes, you can do it. But is there a better use for your time? And is there a faster, cheaper way to achieve this? I'm like, all right, that's a fair assessment. So if you can do something like, I can recall when I was younger, I made a deck of cards for a game that it's, if you're at all familiar with Star Wars, Han Solo won the Millennium Falcon playing a game called Sayback. And there are fans out there that built a system of rules and what the deck should have for cards in it. And I used the equivalent of MS Paint to edit a whole bunch of videos or a whole bunch of still images from the Star Wars movies into individual cards. I even made lightsaber blades and all that stuff from scratch in those programs. And they looked pretty good. And most people wouldn't have been able to make that kind of an image work in such a simple art program. But like, if you can produce a working deck of cards, and I played games of that card game with other people. It was fun. It was a blast. I couldn't sell them because it's not my property to do that with. But if I wanted to, I could have made a whole series of playing cards of different games, like rework a whole different version of Go Fish and do it with science fiction monsters instead, and just change some of the terms, make my own artwork for it. And because it's a public property, it's like a public domain, like Crazy Eights and Go Fish and Old Maid. They're not proprietary, they're not copyrighted games. So if you want to take them, change the names of them, and do different artwork for them, you can produce a bunch of games. And with a MS Paint or some equivalent program, if you're good enough with it, you can produce the artwork and publish those games and get a company that can make your deck available and sell it online or something like that on eBay or through some other site, and that's totally doable. Doing that sort of artwork in an MS Paint style program means that some of the steps take longer. So if you're making 15 games this week and you're doing the art for them, that may make more sense to do like a Photoshop where you can do them like that. You have some presets, you establish some templates that'll run any art you run through into a template like that, and just boom, 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 boom. You can do out a whole deck in about a couple hours instead of like 3 days work to get a complete deck of cards done. Totally makes sense if you're doing it on a production level. I'm never going to be doing a lot of things on a production level. I am a craftsman, not a mass producer. And even to the degree, I was talking with my friend earlier today, my mom, when I went up to visit her, I showed her the star puzzle that I made. And she thought it was really cool. She was talking with one of her friends about that. And her friend is in charge of a sort of artsy craftsy store and was interested in potentially having some of those for sale in the store. And so like, that's really cool. And she says, when you produce some more of them, and I can do like 5 or 10 of them in a month and have them available for sale. That's totally doable. But I had my friend here earlier today, and we were chit-chatting, and he really likes those puzzles too. And he goes, I know this chain of restaurants that sells wooden puzzles, to people in their restaurants. And I'm like, okay. And he goes like, if you got your stuff in there, I'm sure this could go big. And I'm like, that could be a problem, because here's the thing. If you have a chain of restaurants and each one of them has 10 of your puzzles in it, and they're selling 3 per day, and you need to stock repeated copies of that, the number of hours of work to produce those puzzles to keep those stores stocked would be more than full-time hours. It'd probably be about 60 hours a week minimum to keep those stores stocked. And the cut I would get off of those puzzles would be less than if I'm selling them myself online, and like an online vendor like Etsy takes their cut, or eBay takes their cut. So like figuring that, yes, they have the means to sell more of them more often. So quantity of moving puzzles. But in order to achieve that, for my own sanity and for my own ability to do something other than that for the next year and a half, I would have to hire somebody to work with me and do some of that. And I would have to maybe get my own laser cutter and make arrangements to get the supplies of the wood that I need to do that. Or if I do it in acrylic, do it in acrylic. And I would have to set it up as a full-time business for production. And the end result of that production is less income per puzzle, but more puzzles sold. And so in that case, that employee and the laser cutter and the arrangements for raw materials is sort of like the professional photo editor and illustrator using Photoshop versus some of those other programs that they're free, but they take a little more finesse to get to do certain things. But I mean, yeah, there are trade-offs for some of that, but I'm definitely like, not only do I there's a phrase I've said to a friend of mine, the housemate I used to live with, actually. I've said before, and it's like, look, I have a design I've come up with for what I call the ultimate utility pen. It has a bunch of functions and features. I'm working on building a prototype in the next year or so. That's all cool. I'm maybe going to do a Kickstarter for it or something like that. And I'm maybe going to see if I can produce a limited run. And then I'm done with it. Because here's the thing. I don't want to build the better pen company. I don't want to spend the next 25 years building the company, hiring employees, hiring managers, getting a payroll system worked out, supply lines available, and quality control check. Like, I could potentially do that, and I could potentially build a company big enough and well enough in producing those pens that I could make past a living to at least a financial legacy for some of my relatives when I pass away or whatever. I could build a competitor to Bic. Let's just imagine I went that far. Bic pens, I could replace them, or Pilot or whatever. And like, I could build a competitor to those companies and spend the next 25 to 50 years of my life doing that. I don't want to. Like, I want this pen to exist because I want one. I think there are other people who think it's a neat idea and would want one. I'll create it. I'll make more than it costs me to make it back, so that it's worth my investment of my time to make a saleable product from that. And then I'll move on. And when I move on, I will probably make all the plans and details of how to make them available for people to produce their own. Because I don't want to be in charge of managing all of that crap for the rest of my life. I'm done. Now that works for something like a pen or some of the other projects that I want to work on. There are some projects that I want to work on that need a distributor, a big style manufacturer to make them happen. And when you get to that kind of project, I may end up selling that kind of thing to a company. Like you can sell the product idea to a company and then just walk away. Because I don't want to, like, I've got things to do. Like, I've got multiple projects I want to work on, and I don't feel like hoarding that. Like, I don't want to be a Disney. I don't want to be a Nintendo. Like Nintendo, if you even like do a playthrough of any of their games, they're gonna pin you to the ground and dissect you. They're brutal, and I feel like that's counterproductive. Yes, they're big enough that it's not going to hurt them too much, but in my mind, like if I produce a game, I want people playing it, and I want people excited to play it, happy about what I'm doing, and like I don't want to put it past the price point that anybody can reach it, and I don't want to fight everybody about how much they're allowed to show other people. Like, no. Half the fun of this channel is seeing what creative people have created and imagining what else could be done with those ideas. If you prevent anybody playing with those ideas, we don't get things like Star Wars. Star Wars happened because the creator, George Lucas, was a fan of spaghetti westerns, was a fan of dogfight movies, of like World War plane fights. And he was a fan of cinematography. He was a fan of Joseph Campbell's mythology. And he compiled all of those together to build a movie that had all of his passions. But if Joseph Campbell had come along and said, "You can't use my ideas," we wouldn't have Star Wars. If the person who invented the screw had made it impossible for anybody else to produce screws, we would make most of our houses with bricks, because a screw would cost you $30 a screw, and you could only get them from one company. It's like, I don't want to ever create something that's like that. Not only because I don't want to be roped into managing that for the rest of my life, but I think it squelches creativity. When I write fiction stories, when I get to the point where I feel like I'm ready to publish some of my fiction, what I want to do with that fiction, I want to sell them on Amazon with the understanding that if you wanted to write a story of those characters in that setting, you could not only write your fan fiction, but you could publish it yourself as a book and make money from it. I want you publishing any books of those characters. Now, it doesn't mean that your work is considered main timeline, canon accurate work. But that's fine. Like, I would love alternate visions of what the universe might look like, or a story that's relevant to you and your lifestyle, written within the story. Like, I think it would be kind of fun to just take a Star Wars setting story, just write the Star Wars setting as if it were from the point of view of any of the other patrons in the cantina. What did the change in the Star Wars setting look like from their perspective? That would be fascinating. I want to read those stories. And if I'm doing that kind of writing of my stories, I want people to be able to write their first book in my setting. I want people to feel free to be able to do that. And so I don't, it's one of those things that kind of puts me at odds with the art by the square inch approach. It puts me at odds with the, an ebook for $25 for 30 recipes. I see the brilliance in the marketing and the managing of that kind of thing, but I also feel like it's harder for me to get myself into that mindset. And like if I make a painting and you want to do a, what's his name? The pop artist who did the Campbell's soup can multiple times in different colors. Like if you want to do one of those piece of works of my work, go for it. If you want to sell and make money from that, go for it. I'm okay with it. Don't take my work and change nothing of it and sell it as yours. Don't do that. But like, and I think there is an area where I'll lay down, like, maybe not. Like if I produce a line of t-shirts where I do the artwork and I come up with a phrase or a catchphrase or a slogan or something like that, don't steal my slogan, don't steal my artwork, don't use my name. So like if I say it, like if I do a better logo for this channel and I make a t-shirt with that logo on it and I say, thanks for supporting inspired content, I don't want anybody else making a t-shirt that says thanks for supporting inspired content and making money off of that. I don't want that. But I mean, that's about as big a limit as I really want to put on it. Yes, I might get a little frustrated if I make my board game and somebody takes pretty much all of that and does hand-drawn artwork and uses my same rules. Yeah, I'm a little annoyed by that. But, it's like, am I going to spend months taking them to court and fighting about it? Probably not. I mean, if there's undeniable abuse of that kind of thing, I would almost prefer to do a response in the public forum like a YouTube video for that. And an example of something like this that happened years ago. I'm a fan of the anime Cowboy Bebop, and specifically of the character Edward, and of course Ein is paired with Edward frequently. And years ago, I got a little plushie of Edward and Ein, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And then I found out the company that was producing these over in Asia was producing these, and there was a custom handcrafted plushie maker in the United States who had produced this plushie before the people in China did. And they're using, like, the design is almost exactly the same. The biggest difference between hers and theirs is they used a felt for Ein and she used a fuzzy fabric. And that was the only difference. And when I found that out, I'm like, oh, I feel terrible. Because I got the one from China, and I was enjoying my plushie immensely, only to find out they'd stolen the design from their creator. I was like, I don't like that, and I don't want people who do that doing that to me or others. But like to a certain degree, it's gonna happen. Like I've talked with some artists in the past who have had to have that fight, and there's some of them out there that's like legitimately, it's I'll send them a cease and desist because that doesn't cost you anything for the most part. But I'm not going to chase down everybody who uses one of my paintings as a wallpaper on their website. I have better things to do with my time. Because in the end, even if they sell that wallpaper 4 times in the next 5 months, the amount of money they get from doing that doesn't come out in the wash when I spend money to take them to court for it. And you have to take them to court for it. They're not just going to suddenly stop. If you ask them to stop, they may stop. If you publicly shame them and make it clear to other people that they are stealing, that's a more effective way of doing it. But chasing a legal battle to own a thing is not my style. It's not something I'm interested in doing. And I don't want to be a big brand who's hoarding its content. Like I want to freely create things. Yes, I want to make a bit of a living off of it eventually if I can. Like sell some paintings, sell some prints of paintings, sell some t-shirts, sell some books that I publish online, sell some of my video games as a donationware so people can give as much as they think it's worth, sell some music, sell some products in crafts fairs, and move on to play with other projects. Find out what other people are creating. And just sort of like enjoy the creative process with other creative people. There's always going to be some scummy person who tries to make a living off of you. There's always going to be one of those guys that will steal your video on YouTube, download it, put an ad on the side of it for some product they're hawking on Amazon, and post it up as their own video. And it's like, if somebody lets me know it's there, I'll ask them to take it down or report it to YouTube, and then I'm done. I don't want to spend my time chasing that. That's not what creating is for me. That's sort of like a rant that I went on there. I don't know why I did that, but yeah, it's just sort of like the ebooks. I really appreciate her approach to that. I guess I'm recapping now. The ebooks, I appreciate her marketing approach to that because it takes into account the fan base. I prefer the open source software stuff, but I'm not going to begrudge anybody who's using something that's not like that. And the only time I'd get frustrated with something like that is if you save them as like I think the thing that frustrated me about Blender was there was no easy way to export anything I built in Blender as an STL file that I could 3D print. So, like, if I would love to do a sculpture and do photogrammetry around it to capture the item in 3D and use that in a 3D modeling software to stitch it together into a 3D model of my object, my sculpture, and then export it as STL file and sell that STL file to people with 3D printers, and maybe put a listing up on Thingiverse that people could get printed and buy a printed copy of it from. Is that Thingiverse? No, that's Shapeways. You can do that on Shapeways, and like I wouldn't mind doing that and selling prints of my sculptures. That would be cool. I'd love to do that. And if somebody wants to take one of my sculptures and twist it or put the Mona Lisa's face on the butt or whatever, I don't care. Like, do it. Express yourself. Have fun with it. Share it. That's half the fun of creating something, is knowing that somebody's going to do something with it. I don't know how you feel about religious stuff, But I have been told in the past that with my hair down, I resemble a certain religious figure. And so I had this idea of doing a calendar a few years ago where I would dress up in a costume of this character and do some funny stuff. And I have had the consideration of making this calendar, and maybe if the images are fun enough, making some t-shirts like that. And I was goofing around with a guy in California who has a striking resemblance to me, enough so that people mistook us for each other during the convention the whole time. And he does make a living doing impersonations. He is actually the guy, if you go on to, I think it's Fiverr. If you go onto Fiverr, you can hire him to read your message in a video as Jesus. And so it's kind of funny. I was chit-chatting with him, and he was sort of defensive. He's like, well, you kind of look like, but I think you look more like Weird Al Yankovic. And I'm like, I've had somebody say that once or twice in the past, but I get more people who stop me on the street or in traffic to tell me who I look like. I understand. But he and I were just talking about this, and he goes, you look more like Weird Al. And I'm like, so, like, Weird Jesus Yankovic? And he goes, oh, that would be kind of funny. And I'm like, what would I be doing? Like parodies of hymns? And he goes, oh, I would bless the like button all over that. And he's like, you've got to do that. And I'm like, oh, do I? Am I going to have to do that at some point? There would be hilarious videos. There would be some people who just took offense no matter what. But they would be kind of fun to do. And, like, that would just be, like, if I did like a little album of Weird Jesus Yankovic and did parodies of hymns, comedic parodies, as like a series of videos or songs that you could download, that would be fun. And I think some people would have enough fun with it that they would enjoy it. And you know, if I did it as a shareware donation, if you like this creation, you know, kick me $1 or $2 at some point and do it through Patreon or something like that. I'd be fine with that. I don't want that to be my career either. I really don't. But as a series of projects I have on the back burner at this point, it's one of them. The part of the appeal of that is I was talking with some people a while ago about what makes content go viral. And I have my own structured mindset of what this is like. And I believe I have like a 7 categories of viral content. So things like what we call inspiration porn. Like the guy with no arms and no legs who's, you know, being an entrepreneur, and everybody's like, oh, that's so awesome. That's good for him. And it's like, if he had arms and legs, nobody would care what he's doing. So like everybody's just into it because they're inspired by his inspiring story, and they're paying for that sense of inspiration, not what he's actually making. And so that's one type of viral content, is one that makes you feel good and inspired. And then there's a couple of other categories of content, but one of the categories is like shock jock stuff, like a Howard Stern kind of content. And I was thinking for a little while of doing some sort of like social experiment video that I do each one of my viral video styles, my categories of viral content, and then later explain these are demonstrations of what makes videos go viral after they've gone viral. But I was always super uncomfortable with the idea of doing a shock jock, because of all the categories of content, like when I talk about the the dress that everybody was talking about a few years ago. Most people know what I'm talking about, but nobody's offended by that. They're bored by it and they're frustrated if you keep bringing it up too often, but they get that that's a thing that they can share and interact with, and it becomes cliche and old at a certain point. But there is an aspect of shock jock style works that is complicated, and that's you just can't take them back. Once you've done it, you've done it. You can't take that back. So if you do something offensive, it's on your record. And many people will always see you as that offensive person after that. If you do something that you scare somebody or play a mean prank or something like that, you're just that jerk always and after. And I don't want to get that reputation just to illustrate that one point. That's not my style. That's not what I want to do. It's not the kind of thing I want to encourage. But doing parodies of hymns dressed as Jesus and doing a calendar of Jesus doing goofy things is right on the edge of, it's not malicious, it's not hurtful, and if you do it right, you can do it in a way that's positive and still having a little bit of fun with it. And I think that's maybe what I'm going to end up doing for that category, because it is shocking to see somebody doing that. I think there was a guy who did it a few years ago where he was in a Jesus costume with a beard and a crown of thorns and the whole 9 yards, walking down the streets of New York City, and then he starts singing an Aretha Franklin song, Still Alive or something like that. I Will Survive. And while doing that, he strips off the main robe and he's in a loincloth. And he's marching down the streets of New York or something like that, singing it, lip syncing it to the camera. And I was like, that's going a little far. That's going a little far. But most people get that this is all in fun. So I think I could probably do that. And then, once I've done it and it's out there, and I then go back and discuss that it's part of the series of videos that are meant to illustrate how to go viral, and then I just leave it alone after that, I think I could get away with it. But I don't know. You tell me if that's something that is of concern to you. If you want to check me on that, let me know. But I have some pretty born-again Christian friends, and I'm not sure if they would go for that idea. I have to think about that one. But I have some other music that I want to make. And some of it's goofy, fun music. And some of it's more realistic, not realistic, more serious. But how do you feel about pen names or nom de plume? Because I feel like sometimes it would be an advantage to do stuff under a different name. Because I think there's some important messages to share, and then I think there's some creative content to create, and the two shouldn't necessarily be seen coming from the same source. Like I can respect people's religious beliefs, but I have also written fiction where the main characters and the theme of the setting can be considered somewhat blasphemous if taken seriously. It's sort of like it's hard for It's just a hard category to really play with if you're not too careful. Oh wow, we're at an hour and a half. Yeah. Uh, so tomorrow would be Sunday. So I'm starting a new week of planning for next week. This coming week, I think is going to be the finalizing of the plans for each category of content I'm going to do over the next 2 months. So book, video, board game, product and service, food related. I think I'm doing music this time around. That'll be something I'll go over in the next few days. And video game, and then the first category content for health and well-being. So not only projects that I do updates on live and sort of figure out how I'm going to do them live this time, but also plotting out the publish and release of the edited content for the 4 weeks of April. So that'll be tomorrow. I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night. All right, so and take it to video.